And it's more than a book, it's a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. And it's definitely part of a movement that's labeled New Thought. And New Thought really flourished in the 1900s. If you're not familiar with the history, there were a lot of New Thought people, Dr. Holmes, the Fillmores, who created Unity, and they had been taught by, I forget the lady's name, who had been taught by Mary Baker Eddy. Emma Curtis Hopkins. Emma Curtis Hopkins really was the teacher for Holmes and the Fillmores. And she had been influenced by Mary Baker Eddy, who was the first Christian Scientist. That's not considered part of New Thought, however. The philosophy of science of the mind is so broad. It's a category of thought that includes nearly all the known major religions. In our talking circles, we frequently deviate from the thinking, the thoughts that are in science of the mind. And what I remind people is that may not be actually part of our teaching, but it's not outside our teaching either. Because this teaching is very open, very broad. And almost anything from another religion that comes up, you can put it into science of mind terms somehow. We cover a lot of mystical, esoteric subjects, and I just remind people, that's not outside our teaching. It's not specifically covered in science of mind. But I was very pleased to notice at Santa Rosa, their midweek activities include Reiki healing circles, drum circles, and what they call a fire talk circle. Those are all the things we're doing too. They're sort of not outside the teaching, but again, they're not covered in the teaching. So this is the 100-year anniversary of Science of Mind. On page 1 of Living the Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes tells us, the science of mind is intensely practical because it teaches us how to use the mind principles for definite purposes, such as helping those who are sick, impoverished, or unhappy. Each one of us should learn to become a practitioner of this science, a demonstrator of its principle, a conscious user of its power. The power already exists, but the existence of power is of no particular value to us until we use it. We must not only be conscious of the power, but we must actually be actively conscious to use it. This is one of the first lessons we learn in Science of the Mind. So some people compare Science of the Mind to an operating manual for life. You remember operating manuals? We used to get them with everything. Now it's, you have to download it, or you have to intuitively learn how to use it. I think the reason they did away with operating manuals is because men never read them. And the women intuitively knew how to use it. So it speaks to our moving to intuition. So it's like we were given the most marvelous computer in the world, one whose capacity is infinite. Most of us were taught by our teachers and parents to use it as a calculator or a word processor. That's what we use our computers for. Without an operating manual, we may never know what it can do, what it's capable of. Science of Mind is our operating manual for life. It tells us what the power can do and how to use it. If we use according to the manual, it can broaden our lives to infinity, can restructure our health, our wealth, loving relationships, create expansion in our lives. So what do we mean when we use the term mind? In the glossary of Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes explains mind this way. Actually, there's no such thing as your mind and my mind, his mind, her mind, and God's mind. There is just mind, in which we live and move and have our being. Mind is both conscious and subconscious. Conscious mind is spirit in either God or man. Unconscious mind is the law of conscious mind acting, and is therefore subconscious or subjective. Mind is potential energy, while thought is the dynamic force which produces the activity for manifestation. The one mind is all of truth. Our mind, that point in God consciousness, which we call our mind, is as much of truth as we will allow to flow through and bless us. So I'm sure that clears it up for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking yesterday at lunch with a practitioner from another church about languages, and we were talking about the translations of the Bible, and I said, well, learning to be a practitioner in this teaching, you have to learn another language called science of the mind, and we just saw an example of it there. That's heavy science of the mind language. So let me try to clear it up just a little. In the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, Charles Fillmore, who was creator of Unity, has a more understandable explanation of mind. There are three phases of mind: conscious mind, subconscious mind, and superconscious mind, called the Lord. That seems straightforward enough, but wait, there's more. The superconscious mind transcends both the conscious mind and subconscious phases of mind. The harmonious working together of these three seemingly separate minds is necessary to the bringing forth of the latent possibilities of man. That's getting a little easier to understand. Three phases, and superconscious mind transcends the other two. But it takes all three working together. The mind of spirit, God, transcends the mind of man. But it takes them all working together for man to fully express himself. Let me repeat that. It takes all three phases of mind working together for man to fully express himself. Well, guess what? If all three phases are working together, you're expressing yourself as spirit, as God. That alignment is what we're working for. That alignment allows spirit to fully express itself as us, through us. That's what we were meant to be, who we were meant to be. Now, I don't know if many of you are familiar, probably some of you are, with the symbol over there. The symbol is the symbol of science of the mind. It's on the screen. It's also in the little bit of a dream catcher here that was made for Reverend Rebecca, that she gifted to us. It's interesting to me, in the Science of Mind magazine, that's called the metaphysical chart. Now, the top layer is universal conscious, which we were just talking about. Superconscious, spirit. The middle layer is subconscious, universal law, subjective mind. It's the mirror of mind, or soul. The bottom third is unconscious form, mirror of matter. It's the effect. You get top layer is spirit. Second layer is universal law, or cause. Bottom is form, effect. It's where things take form and we shape things. The point drawn through the center symbolizes the descent of spirit into matter or form. And that takes us to manifest. This is how Spirit works through us to take form, to do cause and effect. So we're a big part of it. And it's all one circle. It represents the unity that comes from one. Man reenacts the whole universal life, and our nature is identical with Spirit. When you truly understand this symbol, you understand the philosophy of science of mind. But the truth is that the universal law works whether we use it or not. It works whether we believe it or not. It's always been there. It's always been working whether we knew it or not. Don Miguel Ruiz tells us, the truth doesn't need you to believe it. The truth simply is. And it survives whether you believe it or not. Don Miguel Ruiz, someone told me now lives in Reno. Does anyone be able to verify that? No? Linda?
John Louise Jr. lives in Reno.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, that's good. Yeah, we'll have to see if we can get him and his dad to come speak one day. So the truth of science of mind is that it applies God principles that already exist. We didn't create these principles. Spirit did. But we have learned how to use these principles. As Don Miguel Ruiz reminded us, the truth works whether we believe it or not. That's the truth of how Spirit works. It's a principle. It is what Spirit is. It works whether we believe it or not. More importantly, it works whether we use it or not. It's like the principles of flight. They always existed, but until the Wright brothers kind of applied them, believed that would work, we didn't know how to do it. The principle was always there. There's so many things just like that. We still don't know what we don't know, so we can't apply it. We can't say we will use these principles until we figure out what those principles are. As I said earlier, this is what's labeled New Thought. I also, in my mind, call it and label it Ancient Wisdom. In looking at Native American spirituality, I see a lot of commonalities, a lot. They lived close to nature. They understood how nature worked. In Living of Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes tells us, the science of mind is comparatively new, but the mental experience of the invisible universe is as old as the history of man. It is new in that for the first time in history, we put together all findings which contribute to the establishment of man's relationship with the universe, to the end that we may be able to apply our spiritual understanding to the everyday problems of human life. Now, I find it interesting also that Dr. Holmes doesn't take credit for this. He says, the science of mind is not a special revelation of one individual. It's rather the culmination of all previous revelations. We take the good wherever we find it, making it our own as we understand it. The realization that good is universal and that as much good as any individual is able to incorporate in his/her life is theirs to use. What constitutes the science of mind and spirit. Years ago, that quote really helped me come to the realization that the universe is good. I believe most of what I read from Dr. Holmes. One of the things I read was the universe is good. You may have heard me say, it's good to be a Stevie. I believe the universe conspires for my good. So I'll ask you, is the universe conspiring for your good?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe it doesn't. Dr. Holmes tells us the universe gives us as much as we are able to incorporate into our lives, and it is ours to use. Unless you are open to it, unless you learn how to use it, the universe isn't going to work as hard to give you the good stuff. Because it gives you good stuff and you go, that's not what you're going to attract the next time. It's an attitude of appreciation. And we heard again yesterday, appreciation creates appreciation. Something that you appreciate grows in your experience. It appreciates, that's what the term means. So in The Science of Successful Living by Raymond Charles Barker, it's easy to sit back in life and realize why we aren't where we ought to be. Such speculation on the past is psychologically and metaphysically vicious, as it keeps the mind's attention on evil rather than planning our good. No one is ever improved by your telling him their faults. You've learned this from experience. Self-improvement cannot be forced on anyone. Unless it arrives as a desire within the individual, it never will accomplish its purpose. The age of trying to reform people is gone. Modern psychology has awakened us to the fact that information heals, but reformation only causes guilt. One of the many things I love about this teaching is we don't try to reform anyone. We certainly don't teach judgment. Without reformation and judgment, we don't cause guilt. In fact, we teach we have to release guilt. There should be no sense of guilt. It serves no purpose other than limiting our ability to accept the gifts of Spirit. And these gifts are throughout the universe. The essence of spiritual mind healing and all true religion philosophy is an inner realization that the presence of perfection is in us and around us. It's the hope of heaven, the voice of God, proclaiming, I am that which thou art. Thou art that which I am. I think that's a biblical quote, but it's in The Science of Mind from Dr. Holmes. So again, science of mind is an operating system for the human condition, but it doesn't sit well, or it's like an operating manual that sits on the shelf. If you don't take it down and read it, if you don't understand it, if you don't apply it, it doesn't work. The operating manual is available to all of us. It operates on principle. And like a computer, if you press X plus Y, you get Z. So it is with science of the mind. You put garbage in, you get garbage out. You put hate in, you put hate out. You put love in, you get love out. So we have to decide how we're going to use that. When we understand these principles, we prepare to surrender our habitual prejudices and justifications that we've used in the past to the law of mind and the teachings, science of the mind. We will naturally experience the beneficial effects. You've heard me mention before, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. If you boiled our teaching down to one line, it's change your thinking, change your life. Unless you're willing to make the changes in your thinking, in your beliefs, you'll experience the same results. At the Center for Spiritual Living that I went to in Las Vegas, we had a wonderful lady who was our senior teacher. She was very wise, very compassionate, very experienced. So it was really a surprise to me when one day she got up and said, Unless you're willing to change your story, don't come to me for healing. Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. And what she was talking about was so many people wanted to hang on to their story. They wanted the healing, they wanted the benefits, they wanted the abundance, the health, but they didn't want to change their story. They owned that story. They weren't going to let go of that story. I can tell you, there were people who were personally offended by that. Why? She didn't name any names. So they were sitting there thinking, that's my story. I can't let go of that story. They owned it, and they didn't come back. I've seen that happen maybe once here. Just once. I know most of you well enough to know you all want to or willing to and have taken major steps to improve your story. I'm so proud of this tribe. So we all have free will. You can't heal others who refuse the treatment. This is a very active tribe here. I don't think that applies to anyone. I just used it to make a point. So it is the most simple thing in the world, and it can be so difficult to let go of that story. That's how we grew up. That's what we know. Sometimes our story can be bad, but it's also comfortable. So applying the truths of science of the mind, it's like learning a foreign language. The more you use it, the easier it gets. So when you begin to think in the new language, you know you've learned it. Some of the science of mind truths are much more effective when you literally begin to think in these new terms, in this new way of thinking, in this new thought. Begin to think in expecting the best. That's got to be our outlook. Knowing that Spirit is providing you the very best existence and conditions for your growth. Spirit always has our highest best in mind for us. The other similarity to learning a new language is the longer you don't use it, the more you lose it. Now, I've said before, once you raise your consciousness, I don't believe it goes back down. But you can forget how to use these teachings. You get so focused on life that you forget to apply these teachings. And then they're not going to be quite as beneficial. Spirit will find a way to put you back on that path of remembering quickly. Those little burdens and bumps in the road serve a purpose. I meant to tell you, this outline today, unique to anything I've seen before, was prepared by Dr. Ken Gordon, the spiritual leader of the International Center for Spiritual Living. And I thought it was very exciting to see his words come up. So I went and did a little more research about other writings of his. And I'll refer to a quote of his from Science of Mind magazine, August 2017, so it's not that far away. He talked about when Hannibal wanted to cross the Alps with all his men, with all his supply chain. And Hannibal didn't want to do it in June and July. He was doing it in the dead of winter. The Alps are formidable anytime. Crossing them in the dead of winter with all his men, all their supplies, everybody was concerned whether they could do it. His men didn't think they could do it. Hannibal wasn't sure they could do it. So he came up with a little way to incent his men. He broke it into smaller portions. And he'd have men go ahead 20 miles and build a bonfire. And he'd tell his men, we're not crossing the Alps today, we're just going to the bonfire. Can you make it to the bonfire? Yes, they could. And the next day they'd go another 20, 25 miles and there'd be another bonfire. Can you make it to the bonfire? We can make it to the bonfire. We can't cross the Alps, but we can make it to the bonfire. And every day they made it to another bonfire. And that's how he incented his troops to go across the Alps. It was impressive. And it speaks to Hannibal was a science of mind expert. What you believe, you can achieve. They didn't believe they could cross the Alps in the dead of the winter, but they believed they could make it to the bonfire. So to apply science of mind, you use the same principles. If you're looking at something major in your future, break it down into smaller steps. What can I do? How do I get started? I forget the famous quote, the first journey in a 500-mile hike is the first step, or the first step is the first step, something. It's get started. But find what you can believe in, because what you believe, you can achieve. So practicing science of mind depends on your belief. Believe in the universal law that provides exactly what we believe it will provide. This or something better. So until you know you can cross the Alps in winter, believe in something smaller. Take small steps. Prove this teaching to yourself. You can do that. So, from the Science of Mind magazine, and I particularly love this quote, this is October 2017. There is a global tribe believing just as you do, that God isn't separate from us, passing out judgments or blessings. The divine presence is found all around us. It is within us and the eternal mysteries of our human experience. Our thought and actions create our reality. So begin right now, applying the ancient truths of science of the mind to your life. Take small steps, just like Hannibal's men, until you know you're dealing with the universal law of life. It's based on a true principle, without limits. When you apply these teachings in alignment with the mind of spirit, everything that occurs, everything you experience, is taking you to your true purpose, manifesting spirit in that bottom third. That's the form. You are spirit, creating form. So, here's a final affirmation. I place before me the goodness of life and know that it must become my experience. I therefore live my life in accordance to the values of God and refuse to compromise the principle of good for my own satisfaction. And so it is.
So it is.
Now I'll invite Kay to give us the prayer. Well, I'll go hold the light.
Again, rest your eyes. And remember, the goodness of life is right before you, in you and all around. You have merely to open. Merely to open. Know that that becomes your experience. And as you open, more and more of that goodness comes to you. It's all around you. Your life then is in accordance to the values of God. There is no separation, only connection, only oneness. You, Spirit, all that there is the oneness of life. That this life brings you and envelops you in its goodness, its growth, its wealth, its success. So as you open ever deeper, wider, you are in safety and security You are surrounded by light and love. And as you open ever greater to it, more and more. So as you say yes to this, know that the universe conspires to support you, to develop, to enhance all that you desire, all that you shift in consciousness to accept. And in this shift, knowing changes that are easy and comfortable, that are filled with joy and light, love and laughter, that there are no blocks, there are no mountains to blast forth, only those to climb over and to succeed. Is the obstacle in front of you one to be afraid of or to embrace? And in that embrace, it becomes smaller, manageable. It opens your heart to an ever greater expression of who and what you are, that you accept your greatness, your abilities, your strength, your power, faith and trust, deeper and wider, as you reflect that which you call forth: love, joy, beauty, happiness, peace, tranquility. That is your mirror, because that is who and what you are. And that this strength, this compassion for yourself, in this remembrance of who you are, you gather it forth and bring it home. You embrace yourself so you can embrace others, that you can be their light. You can hold them in the space that you have created for yourself, and to know that it grows, that allows them to grow as well, and that you say thank you. Thank you, Mother, Father, God, for this opening, this willingness to participate, to get up and walk the path, and to know when to sit in quiet contemplation, meditation, mere observance of your life around you in the beauty, in the weeds, in the lilies, in the downpours of rain, in the sunlight. All is created for your good, for your nourishment. So in this offering of a way of life, a way of being, that you are it right now, and you merely open to this with the willingness to accept change, accept your strengths and who you are, and to hold that as you hold a child or an infant. That is you, that infant, that child, that you bring home with love and grace, to honor it and to honor yourself, as then you honor each person, which allows them to open up to the greatness that you are. You are not a mistake. You are here on purpose to shine, to be a way, to be a light. So rejoice in this fact. Give great thanks for the joy that it brings you, as it can only bring that to others around, to the world. Each thought, each love, each prayer shifts within you a consciousness. And in that shift in consciousness, you touch, you embrace, you hold the world, the universe, and allow the space for others to do the same. So give great thanks for who and what you are. You are a light. You are the way. You show yourself and others that it can and is being done every moment of your day. in silence, in your voice, in your thought, in your actions, in your consciousness. So in this self-knowing, this great opening to who you are, this moment and every moment, embrace it. Embrace yourself. And with smiles and love and laughter, say thank you. Be grateful, for that is where it all starts. That is where it grows and appreciates. So knowing that this is the truth, this is the principle of life, of love, of God, of spirit, of you, there's no division. That you simply, easily hold yourself in that love and light, always. So I let it be, I let it explore, I let it bubble up within myself as I know it does within each and every one of you. And as that happens, it does in the universe as well. So accepting this, bringing it home, embracing it, I merely let it expand. And together we say,
And so it is.